Hello, Canucks fans. Welcome back to another episode of the Canucks Conversation. It's Chris Faber here alongside David Quadrelli, dressed a little bit different today. No, I'm just kidding. But high above from Rogers Arena here, let's get to Quads here on the cam. We'll do a quick little switch. Actually, we'll keep it there for a second. Go back to Quads there. Look at him. He's looking good today. He's got his hat on. He's got his gear, Canucks Conversation, looking good today. Not very energetic this morning, though. Okay, let's flip over. David Quadrelli from Alberta. Were you listening to Alberta Bound on the way over there, Quads? You're over in Edmonton right now.
You know what? There was no Wi-Fi on the plane, and I wanted to get this out quick because, obviously I'm in Edmonton. We'll talk about that. I'm at the Nation offices, Nation HQ, but I was flying with WestJet, and they offered complimentary Wi-Fi. Like it said, there's onboard Wi-Fi. Maybe they didn't use the word complimentary because they were saying like, oh, if you want to use the Wi-Fi, just download the WestJet app or whatever. So I used my data to download that. So I was like, okay, whatever. I want Wi-Fi on the plane, so I'll do that. So I download it. And then once I load up the app, it's like, oh yeah, you can purchase Wi-Fi for $11.99. And I was like, are you kidding me? And that's for a 1 hour session. So I didn't bother. I had no Wi-Fi on the plane, but I had Alberta Bound is downloaded on my phone just for this occasion.
You should
so
have it.
I listened to it on repeat.
Yeah. I'd hope it'd be downloaded by now. It's a song we've heard multiple times on our way to Alberta. First, I got to mention, because I suck at these intros, delivered by the great folks at DoorDash. You can use promo code ConvoDD. Thank you, Quads. Good job with the ding dong. Promo code ConvoDD. That's going to get you 25% off your first order, as well as free delivery. Did I say that correctly, Quads?
25% off, free delivery with your first order with the DoorDash app. Does not get much better than that, folks. My name is Dave Quadrelli. We're back. It's the Canucks Conversation podcast, joined as always remotely by Chris Faber, the man who built the place. Our technical producer is Alex Allard. Chris, what do you have on tap for us? Because I was in the air while we planned this.
Yeah, well, first I want to get started with people have been asking a little bit why we haven't done a cities thing in a while with Zephyr Epic. Just finished contract negotiations with them. Zephyr Epic is re-upping with us, so we're super excited for that. I think it's going to be like a 6-month deal with our friends over at Zephyr Epic. We've loved working with them. I think was it 2.5 years now we've been with Zephyr, or 2 years coming up on that with Zephyr? Yeah. We've linked up with them for another 6, so they're going to be here all Canucks season, so we're super excited about that. Some exciting stuff for people on YouTube as well, and this is an idea that Zephyr gave to us, is like giveaways. We're going to do once a month. We're going to do a giveaway from Zephyr Epic. That's going to be a lot of fun, as well as opening up some packs here live on the show, because I feel like that's a thing that like YouTube loves, people opening packs, right? Like this is like a pretty big deal, I think, of people opening cards. Normally it's the Pokemons, like you always say, but we're going to have some hockey card openings. So jacked up to have Zephyr Epic back on board. I know that one excites you as well, Quads. You're a big hockey card guy.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a lot of fun with Zephyr Epic, and it's nice to be re-upping with them. And we get to bring the cities back. Like, the listeners weren't the only people that missed that. That was one of my favorite parts of the show. Jumping to the chat real quick here. Chris French got the first comment. Wanted to point that out. He said, good afternoon.
Pokemon,
Sam Wilson said, fired up. We're fired up. Nop said, nice to see the West Coast baseball team won. What do you guys think about the Mariners? Mariners are up right now, Chris. I don't know if you're watching the game in the background or you're watching the score. Mariners are getting to Justin Verlander early as we record this on Tuesday afternoon.
All right. No, I'm not. I think I'm rooting for the Mariners now, but they did just beat my Blue Jays, so I'm not jacked up about it. But I mean, they're a local team. You got to support the local team, right? BC's team, Seattle Mariners. So yeah, we'll move into the hockey talk here because we got a lot to talk about. Obviously, the regular season gets going tomorrow. We're jacked up for that. You're in Edmonton. You're going to be at the game tomorrow, covering that for Canucks Army, which is going to be great. I guess you'll be at morning skate tomorrow as well to kind of break down some of the lines that we'll be seeing. But let's start, Quads, with recapping the weekend. The big thing that kind of kicked off the weekend was the Vancouver Canucks sending Jason Dickinson and a 2024 second-round pick to Chicago for Riley Stillman, who I am going to very much struggle not saying Corey Stillman. And by the way, yes, Riley Stillman, you've probably heard it by now. He is the son of former NHLer Corey Stillman. And this is an interesting trade for a lot of different reasons. I think we can start with the Canucks sending a second-round pick. That's where I want to start with this trade. That's a lot to give up. The Jason Dickinson experience obviously didn't work out for the Vancouver Canucks. They traded a third-round pick at the time to get him. It felt like when the Canucks made that trade, it was going to be, the equation from that trade to me kind of presented like solving the problem with the third-line center. It felt like Dickinson was going to come in and be this defensive center who was really going to lock down what they have at the 3C spot. And it's like we've heard that story before with Brandon Sutter. Things obviously didn't work out. Dickinson really fell off quite a bit in his time with the Vancouver Canucks. And honestly, like the only thing I'm thinking back to like memories of Jason Dickinson, and then I think the big one that sticks out to me is like him just saying that he was horrible in the faceoff dot. Like I remember that being a very brutally honest quote, and I think that's something that Dickinson was actually, something you could say looking back at his time as Vancouver Canucks, he was brutally honest a lot of times with us in the media. And one of those things was him talking about being horrible in the faceoff dot, not being able to really help on the penalty kill, like a lot of Canucks fans hoped that he would, because he was coming off a year where, when they went to the Stanley Cup final, the Dallas Stars there, like Dickinson was a big piece of that team defensively. He was the matchup guy going up against a team in a Stanley Cup final. You want to add that type of player. And it felt like at the time a third round pick was like, hey, the Canucks probably got something good here, and they only had to give up a third round pick to get him. Now you're in a spot where obviously the contract extension is not in a good spot. That's why the Vancouver Canucks had to attach a second round pick to trade off of it. But I like the piece that Riley Stillman looks like he's going to bring to this team. I don't think he's going to bring much more than maybe a bottom pairing guy, but the style of play and the person that Riley Stillman is, that's a thing that I think this Canucks team does need. And he's going to bring that to this team, and it'll be interesting to see how it kind of shakes down when we start to see the defense core get back to being fully healthy.
And what you're saying is like a baseline of toughness, right? That grit. And like he said, he's going to bring that to the Canucks on a nightly basis. And, that pleases a lot of fans, whether we like it or not. That's something that a lot of people think this team is missing. So for Riley Stillman to be joining the Canucks, yeah, you like the player. Obviously, you don't like what you had to give up to get rid of Jason Dickinson's contract. But again, like we saw the Canucks have the perfect salary cap with their LTIR room and all that. We saw all that, and that was on CanucksArmy.com. I'm not even going to try to break that down. I don't think we're going to do that on this episode, but it's up on CanucksArmy.com. A nice breakdown in layman's terms as well. But Jason Dickinson, you have to give up a second round pick for. Obviously, you don't like that. There's not much more to say about it than that. The Canucks needed to free up some salary. We heard that they were trying to move Michael Furland. They weren't able to do that, evidently, and moving Jason Dickinson with a second, that's all this team was able to do.
Jumping into the chat here, Lisa stopping by. We got Nop as well. Nice to see the West Coast baseball team. You mentioned that one a little bit earlier. Let's get into what Stillman is going to bring, I think, on opening night. I find it interesting today that we see the lines and see Jack Rathbun rotating in with Quinn Hughes alongside Luke Shen. To me, that kind of screams that we are going to see Stillman here on the third pairing playing with Kyle Burroughs. Your thoughts on if we see Stillman above Jack Rathbun on opening night? I think that's pretty interesting, especially the case of him coming in here and being the player type that he is compared to the player type that Jack Rathbun is. It would be interesting to see Stillman get that start over Rathbun in game one.
Yeah, I mean, it would be interesting, but I ask you this, Chris, were you particularly impressed with Jack Rathbun this preseason? Because as somebody, Jack Rathbun, friend of the show, we get all that. I wasn't particularly impressed with his preseason. I didn't really think he stood out. And again, I think when you heard those conversations about, this team has a lot of guys that are kind of showing up and looking like they think they've already made it. I'm not saying that was necessarily Jack Rathbun's mindset at all, but I'm saying that his play on the ice and, the sense of urgency didn't really do anything to make him not part of that conversation, if that makes sense. Again, like we talked about guys like Phil DiGiuseppe looking like they weren't really, thinking they had to work super hard to make the team. We were talking about different guys in this kind of scenario. I don't think Jack Rathbun really stood out throughout camp and throughout the preseason. I think Kyle Burroughs did for all the right reasons. And hell, I even think Tucker Poolman toward the end started to really look like he might be able to play some bottom pairing minutes for this team. I know you probably don't like him next to OEL on opening night, but that's where the Canucks are at right now. So again, I'm not really worried about Jack Rathbun long term. I think he'll be in the lineup, but I think it's kind of a, I don't want to use the term message because I think we're reading into it too much at that point, but I think it's kind of a maybe serves as a wake-up call that Riley Stillman, the guy they just traded for, is getting a spot ahead of Jack Rathbun in the opening night lineup, if that's what we see tomorrow. Again, this is just practice lines. We don't know for sure, but the Wednesday night game, it'll be interesting to see who goes in because, again, I think you're kind of implementing that mindset in Rathbun when you don't put him in a game for opening night to say like, hey, your spot in the lineup isn't guaranteed. Look, we're going with this against the Oilers on opening night, so we'll have to see.
Does it feel like a little bit of a safe decision here almost with Jack Rathbun being, potentially out of the lineup here for Stillman? Because that's how I'm looking at it. I'm looking at this third pairing be something where the Canucks, I think, were pushed around a little bit in Abbotsford at times. I mean, we saw obviously the Darnell Nurse flying arm into Niels Höglander at one point. Elias Pettersson gets pushed into the boards. There was even a play where OEL got interfered with at his own blue line. Like, I do think this is somewhat of a, well, now we're a little bit tougher matching up with you here with a guy like Stillman in the lineup. You're not going to be able to take those swings at a Niels Höglander or Elias Pettersson. I think that comes into play a little bit here, especially for the season opener. You want to set kind of a standard for the rest of the season. I know it's just one game, but I think you can take a lot of a tell from the Vancouver Canucks in these first kind of 3, 4, 5 games, because this season needs to be so much different than it was last year. So the first handful of games, I think they might want to kind of set a standard that's a little bit different this year. And to me, though, you'd probably look at Jack Rathbun and be like, he's a better puck mover. He's a guy who's going to bring more to the offense, potentially even sliding into the second power play unit. To me, it's just they're going to lean on Stillman here, I think, to kind of set the tempo of what this season's going to have to be like, and that they aren't going to be a team that can really be pushed around as much. That's the part that I'm really excited to see with Stillman on this team, is like, that's, everything you hear about this guy is he's a character guy. You could see in all the videos that I was tweeting out when the trade happened of his fights, like the bench is just going nuts. Like they love this guy. That's what it looked like in Chicago watching him play there. He obviously sticks up for his teammates. He's also physical and will initiate on his own. He's not just a reactionary physical player. He's someone who goes out there and does that. Like you put out that fourth line that we're going to see from the Vancouver Canucks alongside with that Burrows and Stillman pairing. I mean, there's going to be a lot of bruises coming from that 5-man group. And I think that's kind of the way the Canucks might be looking at this opening night roster, starting Stillman over Rathbun, if we do see it, which is what we've seen the last couple days here at practice anyways.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're bang on. Like, I don't think there's much to add. I think that's a really good perspective. And I'm sure it crossed their mind. Maybe, if we ask Bruce Boudreau if that's specifically the reason, I don't know if he would admit it, but I'm sure it's crossed his mind, right? So it'll be interesting, because I think I'm going to ask Bruce Boudreau about that if we see Stillman in the lineup tomorrow.
So let's get to it. Regular season starts tomorrow. Moving on to our next little segment here on the bottom. Go for it, Alex. There you go. Spin it up. Alex is real proud of that little transition that he has there. Regular season talk. Let's get to it. The lines today from practice. Obviously, the big news here. Two different news stories, I guess we could dive into, and we'll kind of touch on both of them here in this upcoming part. Brock Boeser, still at practice, but now no longer in that non-contact gray jersey. He's on a line now with Tanner Pearson, JT Miller. That's what we kind of expect to be the top line for the Vancouver Canucks. At 5-on-5, that's the line that I think is going to play the most minutes in the game against the Edmonton Oilers, as well as Quinn Hughes returning to practice. He had a maintenance day. He didn't play in the game on Friday, took kind of the whole weekend off. We were told that he was sick on Monday. That's why he wasn't there. You could see in the interview today a little bit of sniffles as he was talking to media. Nothing COVID related, which is obviously good news, and Hughes kind of touched on that as well. But let's start with Brock Boeser coming back to this lineup. Obviously a huge boost to this team. I think Boeser joked about it that he's only played in 2 preseason games over the past couple seasons here, but at least he gets to be here for opening night. And to me, this guy had to probably work really hard to get himself to even being at playing in a playing spot for this team on opening night, and he's there right now. So that's positive news from what we heard initially from Brock Boeser. It sounded like it could be 2 to 4 weeks. Glad to see that it's closer to 2 than it is to 4, and that he is expected to be in the opening night roster against the Edmonton Oilers.
Yeah, absolutely. And all I'll say on Boeser, obviously we're super happy for him that he's back. And again, like, you're happy that the nature of the injury and the surgery allowed him to keep his skating legs the whole time, right? Like, he was skating and he was skating hard, like right from day one of, this recovery process after the surgery. So what I'm really curious to see is there any hesitancy to shoot, right? Because when Boeser was recovering and had recovered from the crazy back injury that he had, confidence was the big thing that kept getting talked about, right? And the confidence to shoot. Does Boeser have that confidence to shoot? Because he's talked about it time and time again, right? About the sense of, when he's feeling good, he's shooting. And when he's shooting, it means the rest of his game is going to fall into line accordingly. So I'm really interested to see. I hope he hasn't rushed himself back. I understand the desire to get a full 82, and especially given his track record and, his, not inability, but he's been unable to, and no fault of his own, but he hasn't really been able to play many full seasons, right? So I understand why Brock Boeser would want to come back. Like I said, I hope he's not rushing, and we'll see if he's there tomorrow.
You mentioned today, obviously, he feels ready and is excited for tomorrow. Another quote that was interesting to me is that he said it's good enough to play, so that's all that matters. Also mentioned that there's no pain when taking one-timers. The other part I want to bring up about this lineup and Brock Boeser's return is when we can get to the power play lines here, Alex. Don't see Brock Boeser on the first power play unit. It looks like Andrei Kuzmenko is going to start the season for the Vancouver Canucks on PP1, playing as that net front presence. This opens up, obviously, the one-timer, and for Brock Boeser to be the guy who is making, kind of being the guy to be the one shooting the puck on the second power play unit. I look at these two power play units, feel pretty good about it. A little interesting for me having Pearson in the bumper. That might be the only thing I look at this group of 10 players, and I think maybe Podkolzin could get himself into that spot at some point. But I do like Garland as kind of that guy who looks like he's going to be the net front presence, more of a behind the net presence for Garland and making plays from behind the net there. But interesting to see Kuzmenko start on PP1. Do you think if Brock Boeser is healthy all season or all preseason long, we get to this point, or is Kuzmenko starting there because Boeser had to miss the preseason?
It's tough because it was Boeser's spot before, right? And was Kuzmenko going to show enough on a second power play unit where they say, whoa, we got to move Brock Boeser? And was Brock Boeser going to show poorly enough on a first power play unit to get moved off of it? I don't think so. So, Chris, to answer your question, I think no. If Boeser's healthy the entire preseason, that we don't see Kuzmenko on the first power play unit. Although I do like Kuzmenko in that spot on the first power play unit. I think, I think he might be a better behind the net option than Brock Boeser is, and I think Brock Boeser is probably a better half wall option than Kuzmenko is. So I kind of like the fit for both players, if I'm being honest with you, because we saw the power play in the preseason. It was really good, and it's good to know, like, again, like I don't want to read into it too much or spend too much time talking about it, because it's good to know that, if something's not clicking on PP1, you've got options now, right? And, we've talked about the options in the past, but they didn't really have options, right? There wasn't anybody that really meshed with that first power play unit the way that whoever they were replacing did. But I would say that Kuzmenko and Boeser, they meshed in similar levels with the first power play unit.
Yeah, most definitely. I think the interesting thing is when you use Brock Boeser as that net front presence, kind of behind the net type of player, you do take away probably his most lethal skill, being his shot. So having him on the left half wall here in this situation, it does open up that to look a little bit different. Also, it's a different feel because I think having a right shot guy as your net front presence does open up, obviously, that bumper shot for a left shot guy like Pearson. It's going to be interesting to see the dynamic of a right shot guy being there on the left side, because all we see on the first power play unit is always JT Miller there, right? So it is a little bit of a different look, and we'll have to see how it fits. What do you think about Höglander getting a chance there on PP2? I mean, it is a little interesting to me. It's um, I don't think Höglander has obviously been in the best books of Bruce Boudreau, especially from the last season and watching him play in NHL games. I think he's probably gone up his rankings a little bit throughout preseason. He's been pretty impressed with him at training camp, but little surprise for me to see Höglander hop on that second power play unit. Just a little bit surprised, not a ton, but just a little bit.
I'm surprised that, you use the word surprise. Like, I don't think it's a bad spot for Nils Höglander to be in. I think, again, you want the player to be confident, right? So again, like he's made the lineup, he's made the roster, he's going to be in the top 9. Again, some of that is due to injuries, but I think you and I have had this conversation, Chris, as well, that, even if there weren't any injuries, I think Nils Höglander left this coaching staff, or would have left this coaching staff rather, with some really tough decisions, right? Again, we've talked about, is there a fit on the fourth line? I don't think you could make the end. And now that Dickinson's gone too, right? If that trade still happens without the injuries, it's tough to talk in complete hypotheticals like that. But I like Nils Höglander on the second power play unit. Again, I think this is a guy who needs to have the confidence. And again, you've talked about Bruce Boudreau, him not being in Boudreau's best books, but this is a chance for Höglander to, one, prove himself on the man advantage, and two, just get some confidence in the offensive zone that you hope can translate to 5-on-5 play as a whole.
Yeah, I agree. I think interesting. You can see it in the chat here. Still no pods on the power play. That's the question, right? I think Vasily Podkolzin's shot. We've heard players talk about it last season that they're like, he might have the hardest shot on the team, right? And I think he's obviously, that's something that he wanted to work on in the offseason here. So to see Podkolzin not get on the power play, a little surprising to me. And I think when I look at the bodies that might come off of that second power play unit, it might be Pearson, it might be Höglander. I think if either one kind of slacks in their opportunity here on the second unit, at least you can slide Podkolzin right into that group. Final thing I want to mention about that second power play unit, and I love to see it, you don't need a center on your second power play unit. You do not need a center. The only time you're going to have to take a face-off with your second power play unit is if you ice the puck, which might happen once in a season. So you do not need a center on your second power play unit. I'm happy to see that. Final thing from the roster is Ilya Mikheyev. Saw him out there at practice yesterday. Looks like he's getting close. He's skating and wasn't really at a full speed or a full stride just yet. but I think he is getting pretty close. And as you can see there in the tweet from Brendan Batchelor of Sportsnet 650, in a non-contact jersey again today. It'll be interesting when he comes back. Does he hop right into that spot for Niels Höglander? Does Niels Höglander come out of the lineup? The other surprise maybe from the lineup we'll touch on ahead of tomorrow, Quads, is Niels Amon. He's made this team. He's made the opening night roster from what we're seeing right now. That's a little bit of a shocker. I think we talked about it being like a hot take, I think, early on or late in the summer that Niels Amon could come in and take that job. I loved what I saw from him at development camp. Similar sort of thing out in Penticton at the Young Stars. I'm still damn shocked that he's going to be on the opening night roster for the Vancouver Canucks. If you would have told me this 3 months ago, I probably wouldn't have believed you, but I might have stolen your take for a hot take on the show. But I am surprised to see him on the opening night roster here.
Well, I mean, he's the extra forward now, right? Once Mikheyev returns, Lazar is sliding back to the middle. Again, Dakota Joshua's played some center as well. You're going to have three centers able to play on that fourth line. Niels Amon's going to be the first guy up, right? And again, who's ahead of him, right? Is it Sheldon Dries? Because when you look at the depth chart at the center position, it ain't pretty for the Canucks. So when you look up and down, I see I agree with you that I'm surprised Niels Amon's made the team. And if you told me that a couple months ago, I'd be even more surprised. But, given the injuries, given the Dickinson trade, I don't think comes as a huge shock. Again, he didn't really do anything to stand out in the preseason. I think Linus Karlsson was kind of someone that surprised me that he got as long of a look as he did on Elias Pettersson's wing. Because, if I have to pick between Amon and Karlsson, I'm going with Amon. But it was crazy to see Karlsson still getting chances with Elias Pettersson, right down to it. And I know injuries played a big part in that. But again, I think this is a good opportunity for Niels Amon. I think it's going to show, though. Like you just kind of pointed out, you're surprised. I'm not surprised given the Canucks' depth, but I do think it's going to show kind of the room he still has to grow and how long it's going to take him to actually become a regular NHL player if he ever does.
It's surprising to me because having names like Phil DiGiuseppe, having Sheldon Dries, even Linus Karlsson, you bring him up. The fact that Amon was able to outwork those three players and win this spot, props to him. He went out and did it himself, right? It's, you mentioned the depth's not the greatest and Dickinson was traded, but still through all that, Amon was able to work himself into that spot. So good for him. Young kid, still, I think 22 years old. And the Canucks signed this guy. This guy didn't get a deal after his initial ELC. That's why the Canucks were able to go and get him, right? So really good spot. And so far looks like a win for the Canucks, even if this guy ends up playing 20 games, right? All you did was spend a contract on this guy. So nice little addition to the Vancouver Canucks. And we'll have to see Niels Amon here on opening night. Quads, let's get to next one there. Go ahead, Alex. Pull it up. You know the photo. Pull it up. We got 5 questions for Quads.
This is news to me.
News to you haven't checked it out. Pull it up. There it is. The price is right. Is Quads questions going to be right here? I got 5 questions for you, Quads, about the Vancouver Canucks this season. And I'm going to set you up here. All right. Yeah, that's enough of the image there. My head looks huge. Look bowling ball on the prices right here. All right. First question, Quads, for you. Who puts up more points this season? Connor Garland or Bo Horvat? And I bring this question up because both finished with 52 points on the year last year. So Bo Horvat or Connor Garland, who finishes with more points this season?
Connor Garland. And the reason I say that, I'll expand. The reason I say that is because to me, and I believe in Bo, but to me, everything broke right for Bo Horvat last year. And for Connor Garland, everything went poorly. That was a bad season for Connor Garland. He's the one that said that. He wants a bounce back year for himself this year. So I'm going to go with Connor Garland on that one.
I agree. And I think getting an opportunity on the second power play unit, as well as potentially being the guy who gets the chance to go up there with JT Miller and play on that line with him and Pearson. We've already seen that be an option. So it's interesting to me. I think Garland is going to produce as well. He put up a ton of points last year, tied for the league, the lead on the Vancouver Canucks anyways, with 5-on-5 scoring. So I think Garland's going to have a good year. And I would go with Garland as well. And not just because Bo Horvat might get traded. Who knows? Maybe he gets traded at some point. That's a hot take, bold prediction potentially for the season. All right, Quads. Question number 2. Over or under on Thatcher Demko at 59 starts this season? Are you taking the over? Are you taking the under 59 starts for Thatcher Demko? Do you know how over-under works?
Yes, I'm taking the over. Our friends at Betway taught me. I'm taking the over on that. I think Spencer Martin's going to be relied upon, but I think 22 starts for Spencer Martin is still a number that I think the Canucks would like to stick in. And again, talking about guys who didn't impress a ton in the preseason, Spencer Martin's part of that conversation, right? I know it's a whole different position, but I think going into the season and depending how the season goes, you're riding with Demko as much as you can, right? And when I say as much as you can, because I mean you got to keep that workload in check, right? You got to make sure he doesn't break down toward the end of the year. But I also wanted to mention Thatcher Demko doesn't agree with the statement that he broke down last year. He was talking about how his injury that he sustained wasn't one that happens when you've broken down. And again, I don't know how much truth there is to that, but I just wanted to add that in since I used the term broke down.
So 61 starts for Demko last year. Doesn't end up finishing the season. 61, does that feel like too much, or is this a different Demko that we're looking at this year compared to the one that didn't make it through last year at 61?
I think you're kind of walking the line. I would like it to be under 59. Like I think they should keep it under 59. I just don't think it's going to happen. I think it's going to be over 59. And again, I don't think you want to get much higher than 65 for sure. I
Right.
think 59 is probably like the number that you actually want to hit as the top, if I'm being honest with you.
Let's get to one in the chat little question here. Garland
Got a
for
couple.
Puyarvi from Yash. And by the way, people who are just tuning in here live, I see our numbers have jumped up a little bit. We're live here from 1 o'clock to about 1:45, 1:30 every day. So come check us out. 1 o'clock here. Maybe push your lunch break back an hour. I'm not taking that deal, Garland for Puyarvi. I think Puyarvi is going to be. I think his stock's going to it's going to be interesting if he plays well. Maybe the Oilers want to keep him, but it just feels like there's just been too much smoke around Puyarvi getting moved that I think that he's one of these guys that you're going to see the trade and you're going to be a little underwhelmed eventually for it. And I think Garland's a guy who looked at around the league, especially by the analytics community, is like he is a guy who is performing up to his contract right now. So the Canucks having him locked up for $5 million, I think it's going to be a fine deal throughout. He's a player who puts up a ton of points at 5-on-5, more than people kind of expect. I know, having somewhat of a down year last year, but you brought it up. In a down year for Garland and a very on the up year for Bo Horvat, they had the same amount of points. So I do think that I look back at Garland's season last year, and I think the only thing really lacking was that 20-game stretch where he didn't score a goal and the points on the power play. Those were the two things that lacked last year. If he has those two, you're looking at the season from Conor Garland and thinking, wow, that's a good year for him in his first year at the Vancouver Canucks. Lisa coming in as well. Will Harmon, cue the money song. We got that coming. Be on a future episode. Working out something with Harmon. Hoping that Harmon Dow is going to be joining us here as a regular contributor of the show, which we would both like, obviously, taking that back from the podcast as well. Okay, Quads, question number 3.
Hold on, hold
You might
on.
not like this. Okay, go ahead.
I'm going to the mall with Harmon tonight. Harmon and I are hitting West
Sick.
Edmonton Mall tonight. I had to mention that. Sorry, I don't want to cut you off too much, but Canucks Bo jumped in the chat as well and said, "How many points for Elias Pettersson this season?" I'm gonna set the over under, Chris, at 85. Over or under that?
Ooh, that's a good number to pick. That's where I would have projected. I'm going to go with under that because I think, knock on wood, an injury keeps him out of a few games. I think if he plays 82 games, he gets 85 points. So I'm going to go under just because there probably are going to be a couple little bumps and bruises that keeps him out of maybe a handful of games this season. So I'll go under 85, but not by a lot. And just because I don't expect to see Pettersson for 82 games.
I'm gonna say over 85, and I'm not gonna expand
Wow.
on
Okay.
it.
Okay. Missed your take on Dickinson train, yay or nay? Kind of meh, maybe leaning towards nay. You don't like to give up the second round pick and the money, I think, as well. You can go back and check that out in the earlier part of the YouTube video as well. Or if you're listening on the podcast, check it out there as well. Ready, Quads, number 3. Maybe Alex needs the bubble on this one because I don't know what this answer is going to be. Quads, which prospect are you most excited to follow this season for the Vancouver Canucks?
Archer Seelovs, and I'm not even doing a bit. It's going to be really interesting to see. And again, you had a really good chat with head coach Jeremy Colleton this morning. It's going to be really interesting to see how many starts Archer Seelovs gets in Abbotsford this season, but also, does he earn those starts? Because that's the big theme of what Colleton said in his interview with you, was just that, look, he's going to have to earn those starts because right now, Jeremy Colleton has 3 starters in Abbotsford with him. So again, it's interesting, one, to see how they kind of deal with the goaltending situation out there. Remember, Patrick Alvin told me when I asked him the question that they were planning on having 2 goaltenders out there in Abbotsford this season. So I'm not sure if that's changed or what's going to happen. But again, I think the biggest thing for me this season, as somebody who watches prospects or watches goaltending prospects for that matter, is Archer Seelovs and also Aku Koskienvo in Harvard, right? Does he get that starting role in Harvard? Because it's not a guarantee that he'll get many starts out in Harvard this year. So those are the 2 that I'm keeping an eye on.
Just for people on the video here, Alex keeps pulling up every time I go to the iced coffee here. Alex keeps flipping over back to me. I see what you're up to, Alex. I could see the video as well here. So nice try pulling that up here. All right, question number 4. Will Andrei Kuzmenko put up more than 40 points this season?
Yeah, I think so. I'm saying over 40 for sure.
Yeah, I think I'm going with over 40 as well. But I don't think he's going to be a guy who gets like near 60, right? Like I would be pretty surprised.
This is a guy playing first power play unit. This is a guy who's probably going to play with Elias Pettersson for most of the year. I see no reason why he can't get over 60. And again, I know this is like sounding like the positivity podcast of the ages, but again, like it just comes down to opportunity, right? It just comes down to opportunity. That's what I kind of put it at. And again, I think there's no reason, especially what we saw through the preseason, that Kuzmenko can't hit over 60.
Right. Over on the 40 points is something I'll go with, but I also think talking about opportunity, it's like, yes, he set himself up to start the season from good play in the preseason for this opportunity. How does he look 20 games in still, right? This is going to be an adjustment period in my eyes. Is he the best option with Elias Pettersson at game 21? Maybe not. Is Vasily Podkolzin, already having 1 year of NHL experience under his belt, the better option at that point? Maybe he should be playing there on a line that you want to get goals from? Potentially. Is Brock Boeser going back to power play 1 as soon as his wrist is really back to 100%? Because I think even from the quotes that Boeser said today, he said, it's good enough to play, right? I don't think it's at 100%. When he is back at 100%, does he get back on that first power play unit? Or anytime there's a struggle on that first unit, does Kuzmenko the first name that gets taken off? Yeah, absolutely. It's 100% the first name that gets off that unit. So I don't think this is, set in stone right now where we're going to see Pettersson's number 1 line mate be Kuzmenko throughout the whole season. And I don't think we'll see him on the first power play unit all season long either. I love what he does in preseason. You need to see a good sample size in the regular season before I think you can really start to talk about getting close to 60 points. I think that's a big ask for a guy like Andrei Kuzmenko, who, yes, up to this point, he's impressed as an NHLer, but he's impressed as an NHLer in preseason. He's got to do it in the regular season before we get to that point. So I'm taking the over on 40 still, but yeah, I don't know if it's going to be that much over 40, and I'll be happy to be impressed if it is more than that. Final one, quads. The Vancouver Canucks right now on Betway, giving you odds that they will make the playoffs. Are you standing with Betway, or are you standing against the sponsor and ripping on their questionable choices here with what the Canucks are to make the playoffs? Do you think the Canucks make the playoffs this year?
We did our predictions for the standings at Daily Faceoff. I've got them at least in a wild card spot. I think the Canucks are making the playoffs this season. Again, I'm not going to encourage people to take that bet, but hold on a second. Can we talk about you on Friday's show telling people to put $50 down on the score being 4-0? You and I were texting during that game, and I thought you were going to jinx yourself because you texted me at like the start of the third, and you were like, dude, I think this might hit. I was like, are you kidding me? It's the start of the third period. And then sure enough, game ends 4-0 Canucks. You were right.
Well, we sent Wyatt Arndt the stanchion went to that game for us, and so I'm up here, as we can see. You can cut to the back view here, Alex. Show them where we are, facing down Rogers Arena, right down there. There's quads over there. He's zoned right out once his prospects report's going on. Look at quads. He's not even moving. Rogers Arena down there. So the horn goes, right? And then a goal happens because it's on like a stream. It's like 30 seconds later. So I'm sitting there like the whole time watching it on the stream and just hoping for like not to hear the horn, right? Not to hear the horn. And then the horn goes when the game ends. And I forgot about that, right? So I'm like, oh no, they scored with like 15 seconds left because I'm behind on the stream. And then I forget that's like they play a bunch at the end, and I was like, oh my god, like it hit. So it came down to the last second about me worrying about that. Follow the Betway bet. We got another bet coming up later here on the show. But I think it's about that time here, Quads, to get to the prospects report. These are big ones when we wrap up the weekend here. So we got a ton to get to. Let's get into it. Let's start with Aiden McDonough, who had 5 points this weekend, 3 goals and 2 assists in 2 games against Vermont. Very nice little showing for McDonough, who was able to step up into a scoring role after not having the best opening weekend. Canucks top prospect, Jonathan Lecara-Mackey, he also found the score sheet. He scored on Friday. I don't remember if we touched on that on the show because I think it happened pretty early on Friday, but I'm not 100% if that one was talked about on Friday's show. So I just want to bring it up. He did happen to score. Now we got the video. Let's go. Flip it over. Philip Johansson. Here he is. The right shot defenseman. Look at the shoulder shrug. Yeah, just scored a goal. Whatever. CHL, not a big deal. Wasn't the prettiest goal. I mean, this is a wrist shot from the right side. He gets it over the shoulder. Just I don't know if that beats NHL goaltenders, but I tell you, he's still putting up a lot of points. In the Champions League, he's a point per game defenseman. That's still damn impressive. He's putting up goals. You like to see that. And Philip Johansson, I tell you, he's starting to become the star of the show in the prospects reports. And for a right shot defenseman, I love to see it. Let's get to another clip here. I got Yanni Yermo as well. He was playing in the CHL, which, by the way, I'm saying CHL. I'm talking about Champions Hockey League. So this is what the European teams, the top teams in Europe, end up playing together. It's sort of like you might know it more in like soccer, right? Where like the teams compete from different leagues to see who's the best. So let's get to that one now quick. The Yanni Yermo one, this one a little bit better. Look at this. Couple steps in from the blue line. He was playing the right side today, also playing on a first pairing. So the left shot 20-year-old defenseman. Nice to see Yanni Yermo getting back on the score sheet. Obviously, he moves extremely well, has good offensive ability. So for him to actually get some goals on the board, that's what we'd like to see from Yanni Yermo. Quads, are you awake over there?
Yes, I put my mic down, but I'm here.
Okay, I'm just making sure. I haven't seen the sleeper cam come up just yet, so that's good. Yanni Yermo, obviously, you like to see him stepping up. I mentioned it, the offensive stuff that he's going to be able to bring throughout the game. Like he took a couple little defensive blunders, also took a penalty at one point. So you don't love to see that, obviously, from Yanni Yermo, but it just feels like he is making better decisions this year so far, and maybe some of that's coming from the confidence that he had at the World Juniors. I just don't think there's been so many of the massive blunders that we saw last season. And finally, for our clips here, let's get to this Elias Pettersson goal. Let this one breathe a little bit. Elias Pettersson in overtime in a J20 game on Friday ends up skating the puck out of his own zone here. And I tell you, he's just looking so good in J20, so confident offensively, defensively, game winner in a J20 game. He is just ripping it up now. He's got 9 points in 6 games for the most recent draft pick in the 3rd round for the Vancouver Canucks. Elias Pettersson, DPD, right, Quads?
Reluctantly, yeah.
Okay, DPD. So yeah, he's ripping it up in J20, and he played an SHL game. He had 4 minutes last week, so not getting into a ton of minutes. Conor Lockhart, he had 4 points in 2 games this weekend. He is now tied for 2nd in OHL scoring with 10 points in 4 games. And I believe we're working on this. I think Conor Lockhart may be joining us on the show tomorrow. So working on that. So that should be exciting if he joins us on the show, talk about his hot start. And finally, I think you can pull the picture here, Alex. I don't know what's going on out in Abbotsford here, but Danila Klimovich, who we're going to be keeping an eye on this season, obviously. Klimovich out here in Abbotsford. No, he's not wearing pants in this photo here. And they're taking their photos, headshots, I'm assuming here. So here's a little behind-the-scenes shot. Danila Klimovich getting ready for the season.
It's not headshots. That's the lighting for like the preseason stuff.
Yeah, but what are they using for this photo here? They're not going to be posting his legs here on the jumbotron, right?
They're going to use his upper half. This is going to be the starting lineup announcement thing. This isn't going to be. They're not going to show the compression shorts that he's wearing. But it's not a headshot, that's for sure.
Why not? It's 2022. Have some fun. Go do the short shot.
Well, anyways, the headshots, you're not going to have green light. That's all.
By the way, he was papered up to Vancouver. I've seen for the first about 45 seconds, everyone's freaking out. It's like, it's Klimovich time. It's Klimovich time. This is it. What did I tell you back in preseason? He's going to make the team. No, he's just papered up here. So the Canucks were able to hit that exact amount and become the first NHL team ever to hit their LTIR 3.5 million exactly, cover it with Michael Furlan, and have $0 remaining. So interesting little paper up and down there for Danila Klimovich. So he'll be down in the HL, but I just speaking to Jeremy Colleton, you brought it up. I talked to him at the end of Abbotsford training camp. He's like, Klimovich has impressed a ton so far this summer and kind of going into the early preseason here. I think not in NHL preseason. I don't think he really stuck out in any of the games, but at the Young Stars, even at practice, at this final scrimmage at Abbotsford training camp, scores 2 goals. I mean, there was only like 5 goals scored in that whole scrimmage. Klimovich puts up a couple of them. I have to feel like Jeremy Colton looks at this guy, and for me, the goal for Klimovich was to be a top 6 AHLer by the end of the season. There's a world, and we might be living in it, where Klimovich is starting in the top 6 in the AHL right now. Like, I think he has progressed that much offensively and at least strengthening his, his strengths, really, like improving the things that he's good at. I think he's done enough of that this offseason and shown that in, Young Stars tournament, at training camp, situations with scrimmages where Jeremy Colton might put him into the top 6 to start the year, which would be massive for Klimovich, because now we can actually see what he looks like at the AHL level playing with skilled guys instead of being in a 4th line role. So that's a real possibility to start the AHL season this year.
Yes.
Jeez, you just zoomed right out, okay?
Well, the Mariners are winning 4-0 as we're recording this,
Yeah.
so I just had to point that out. And
what does everyone in Edmonton think about that? Is Edmonton the Mariners fans? They drive down?
They hated that I had this hat on when I walked into the office
Really?
today. Like, yeah, I was met with pushback immediately. I don't think anybody here is a Mariners fan. I'm scared. Pick me up.
Dang. Okay. Well, on the bottom, get Harmon to back you up. You guys will be able to. You guys, 2 tough kids. From the prospects to the Betway bet. Alex, pull it up. Pull it up, Alex. Betway bet. This is another good one. You want to make some money? Come on down here to the end of the show. Betway. We got NHL hockey today, Quads. NHL hockey today. And here's what I'm going with. This is a player special. Mika Zibanejad and Nikita Kucherov to each score tonight. 6-1. So you put 50 down.
I like that.
You're pulling $50 down. You're pulling out 300. You get your 50 back. You're walking out of there 350. You take yourself out for a dinner, and then you got $300 in your pocket. Boom.
I'm liking
Mika
that.
Zibanejad, Nikita Kucherov. See it on Betway right now. And there's hold on, I wrote this down because you mentioned, I was like, do we ever have a read for Betway? Do we have anything? Promo code, nothing. You go on there, you get your first deposit matched up to $200, which there's a good deal. Betway.com. So you put $200 in, you get 400 to bet. So then you bet it on this. You put 400 down here. Don't recommend that, but put $4 down, turn that into 24. Then you get a free Arby's dinner.
It's foolproof. It's foolproof. Speaking of which, Harmon and I, we're going to either Harvey's or Arby's, 2 places that you can't really find much in BC.
Yeah, this threw me through a loop here that you were even considering Harvey's. Everything that I've heard about Harvey's,
good.
No, I've heard the Harvey's is trash. It's like the Subway of burgers.
Which is cool. I like Subway. That's why I like it so much, is that you get to decorate your own burger. You get to make it however you want. I load that bad boy up with pickles, no extra charge, baby.
Is that, well, you can do that at any place, even McDonald's. No, they don't charge you
for an extra charge. Absolutely, they do. You think McDonald's is just handing out pickles?
Who do you think's had more McDonald's burgers in their lives, Quads? Obviously, I have, and I've known that they don't charge for extra pickles. I used to manage an A&W. You never charge for pickles there.
I don't know. I'm gonna have to do my own research.
Yeah, I guess so. I can't believe you're up in the air about Harvey's versus Arby's. It's Arby's.
I liked Harvey's, man. Even their poutine was good. Their poutine was good there. It was good.
Well, you got to get the Edmonton, obviously Canada's home of donaires, they say, and anyone from the East Coast is gonna throw stuff at me here, heads up. But yeah, you say donaires up there in Edmonton, whatever they got over there. I wasn't blown away with the donaires. You can tell the guys at the office that.
Wow. Wait till he's in Vancouver to say it.
All right. We'll wrap things up there. We'll be back tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Quads, you're going to be at morning skate? Yes? No?
Yep. Morning skate tomorrow. And then we'll do the show, and then I'll be going to the game.
Awesome. At beautiful Rogers Place as well. That is a gorgeous arena. So I'm excited to get your report back from that. We'll expect to see the tweets. Corey's in here saying Harvey's over Arby's in the chat. I don't think so.
It's true.
Maybe for the burgers, but you get the sides, and nothing tops an Arby's loaded curly fries. Nothing tops it.
That's fair. Anyway. That's fair. But it's one thing.
And that's the best item in fast food. It's the Arby's fully loaded fries. All right. Let's wrap things up. Go with onion ring. Get out of here, Corey, with the onion rings. I don't know what you're talking about here. The loaded fries, anyways, I got to get out of the chat here. We'll wrap things up. Hit me back with the back view here. Final view of Quads in his chair. He hasn't moved the whole time here. He's been zoned out the whole thing. Canucks Army hat, Canucks combo shirt. He's locked in, but he's not here. Over from Edmonton at the offices of Nation Network. From here, high above Rogers Arena, thank you for listening, watching, whatever you're doing, to another episode of the Canucks Conversation.
Thanks for listening to Canucks Conversation, delivered by DoorDash. Hit the subscribe button to never miss an episode.
How about keep it to a thank you, Jip?